Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about healthy relationships. I'll probably also talk about unhealthy relationships because I've had a plethora of both. I'm going to talk about 4 things you can do to improve the relationships that you're in, and 4 things to become aware of that most of us do that are destructive and harmful in relationship. I'm mostly talking about intimate relationships, but the principles I'm going to offer you today can bring improvement and greater consciousness to any relationship in your life. So I'm going to start with a disclaimer, which is that I've been divorced twice, and I have excellent relationships with both of my ex-husbands. One of them is dead, so that relationship is very simple. And just because someone's dead doesn't mean you have a good relationship with them. My first marriage was one of the most complicated and difficult relationships I've ever been in, and I've spent a lot of time unpacking what happened in it because I didn't want to repeat it. He had some pretty heavy mental health and addiction issues, which he never resolved. And the reason I can say that I have a good relationship with my dead ex-husband is because I have forgiven him and I have forgiven myself for the ignorance, the immaturity, and the dysfunction that we spewed upon each other. My other ex-husband is very much alive. We were together for 20 years. We still co-parent our children, and we share a lot of respect, kindness, and goodwill to each other. I remain incredibly grateful and indebted to him and his family, and that relationship continues to be a source of support, inspiration, and personal growth in my life. We live in a very powerful time of transition right now, particularly around relationship. The last 100+ years has seen the possibility of true equality for women. We can vote, we can hold jobs, we can own property, we can take birth control so we can have sex without necessarily having to have a baby. And if we do get pregnant, at least at this moment, in most places we have the right to terminate that pregnancy. Many people are exploring the possibilities of non-monogamy and open relationships, having more than one intimate partner at a time. The first time I went to Ireland, divorce was not yet legal and birth control had only been available legally for 10 years. I was horrified. For millennia, women did not have equality, and just the whole structure of life was very different, where women took care of the household and men were working doing heavier physical labor, hunting, protecting the village or city or family, and managing the laws or institutional structure that governed whatever the society's organization was. And marriage, until very recently, was not about love. It was about security, safety, and caring for children and older people. Marriage was a social security structure. I just recently learned about a thing called Leviright Marriage, which is an ancient practice that's still active in some parts of the world today in Judaism and Islam, in Asia and Africa. And in Leviright marriage, the brother of a deceased man is obligated to marry his brother's widow and care for the children. Marrying your brother-in-law might seem like a horrifying idea, unless your brother-in-law is really hot, but it was set up as a guarantee for the care and security of a widow and her children. And the concept of romantic love is fairly new. It was probably born in the age of chivalry, although certainly romantic love has always existed. In ancient Greece, the Trojan War started when Paris abducted Helen, the wife of Menelaus of Sparta, because of her beauty, and he was in love with her. There's some question whether the Trojan War is mythological or real. But either way, people were falling in love with each other 3,000 years ago and having relationship problems. So my relationship experience has been of serial monogamy. That's one monogamous relationship or one partnership at a time. And we're really at this cusp right now of how we orient toward relationship. From the old world view, marriage and intimacy was a contract that supported people for their lifespan. In modern relationship is much more one of choice. And the place I see most challenging in this cusp of change is the idea that if a relationship lasts your whole life, that it's successful. and that if it ends, there's some kind of a failure. And I've really come to a much more organic perspective on committed, intimate relationship, which is that relationship is a living thing, and living things have a lifespan. They're born or they start to grow, they mature, they may produce fruit and flowers, and then they decline and compost back into the earth. Now, a relationship may be an annual, which is something that only lives one season, or it may be a perennial that continues to grow and fruit and flower year after year. But even mighty trees do have a lifespan. Some committed, intimate relationship may last an entire lifetime, and others may not. And each relationship is like an entity in itself. I like the idea that there's two people in an intimate relationship, and the space between them, or how they relate to each other, actually creates a third entity. And how conscious we are in the creation of the dynamic of the relationship can have a lot to do with the health and happiness and fulfillment of the people who are participating in it. So there's lots of reasons people get into intimate relationships. And I encourage you to consider what your own motives for being in intimate relationship are. Are you seeking companionship, fun, great sex, financial security? Are you hoping for someone who will complete you? Do you want to have children? Or maybe you want to have someone else to blame for all the things that aren't working in your life. That was kind of what happened in my first marriage. I read once there are two reasons to get an intimate relationship: to build a family or to grow. I like that. And it fits with my own definition for love, which is to extend oneself for another person's spiritual growth. And although certainly being in love and loving people can be a feeling, a really strong one, sustained, mature love is an action. And one of the biggest issues that I see in intimate relationship, and certainly in my own life, is that I come to the relationship hoping to receive and thinking about what you can do for me, rather than focusing on what I bring to the relationship and how I can give. And if you take anything out of this podcast, I encourage you to consider making that shift in the relationships in your life. To ask, what do I bring to this relationship? What are my intentions here? How am I being loving? What do I give to this other person? Most of us, myself included, can be overly concerned with what I'm going to get. What are you giving to me? How do you feel about me? And I don't take responsibility for my side of the street. There's this amazing 12-step fellowship called Recovering Couples Anonymous. And in RCA, they say each person in a coupleship takes 100% responsibility for the relationship. How is it to take 100% responsibility for your experience in the relationship? You know, Eckhart Tolle, the great modern spiritual teacher who wrote The Power of Now, says we always have three choices. We can accept things as they are, we can ask for them to change, or we can remove ourselves from the situation. As adults, we have free will. We may not like those choices, but they are always available to us. There are no victims in relationship, only volunteers. And relationships, even in the modern sense, are agreements. A lot of times they're unconscious agreements, but becoming really conscious about the agreements we're making in relationship is like miracle grow on a soul level. Whatever the circumstances in our relationship are, physically, sexually, mentally, financially, emotionally, spiritually, socially, if we're in it, we're agreeing to it. And we can accept it as it is. We can ask for it to change, or we can remove ourselves. And discomfort in a relationship is always an opportunity to grow. One of my favorite therapists said to me once, if you want to know a great litmus test for whether or not you should stay or leave a relationship, you can ask yourself, is there more for me to learn here? And if the answer is yes, no matter how difficult, you might want to stay because you'll likely repeat the pattern in another relationship in the future. And if the answer is no, there's not more for me to learn here, then you can either negotiate with your partner to try to go deeper, or you might want to move on. Because life is an evolutionary process, always pushing us to grow and evolve. Now, this doesn't mean that we should leave when things get difficult. And I do believe in the value of commitment, but there's discernment required to determine, is this a difficulty that will strengthen and enrich me as a person? Or is this a destructive dynamic that's depleting or deadening my life force? So I want to talk about the 4 A's of a healthy relationship: acceptance, appreciation, asking for what I need, and staying in my adult ego state. So the first concept, accepting what is, means we don't go into a relationship or stay in one hoping to change the other person. That's actually really disrespectful and generally impossible. My first husband and I both hoped that if we got married that would change him. I know he hoped it too. But dude was a liar, a cheat, and a thief till the day he died. And I couldn't protect him or save him or change him from that. He was good looking, great in bed, and charming as hell, but he was a terrible husband. And I signed up for it. One of my greatest teachers ever. So to truly love someone in the way that we all want to be loved is to be accepted for who we really are. And if I want to change someone else, I'm actually giving them the message that they're unacceptable. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody is acting from their best self all the time, that there's not necessarily change to be negotiated. But true love happens in the moment, and it is about deep acceptance for a person exactly as they are. I know that's what I want. I've had the boyfriend who said he'd like me better if I lost 10 pounds. And the other one who said, you think too deep, and I shut down. After acceptance comes appreciation. Appreciating who the person is, what they do. This is a practice to notice and affirm what's good about the other person. Again, this is fertilizer on a psycho-spiritual level to acknowledge and appreciate and affirm what's good about another. It's like water and sunlight on that plant. The third suggestion is to ask for what you need. Love does not equal mind reading. Expecting someone to know what you need or want telepathically is a setup for disaster. And this is part of the growth of intimate relationship. I need to take responsibility for what I need and not expect you to do it. Now, again, this doesn't mean we aren't interdependent and we don't do things for each other. But it's my responsibility to become aware of what I need, to gather the courage and the resources to be able to ask for it. And know that the answer might be no. Again, this is a real growth opportunity because it calls into question, what is the source of my deepest needs? Is it my relationship or is it the universal life force? Is my relationship my God? And if it is, that's a bad God. It's my experience that we don't have a need without also having the opportunity and the resources to have that need met. But we may have to work for it, and it may come in different ways than we expect. It truly does take a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to support a healthy adult. One person cannot fill all of our needs, nor are they supposed to. I grew up in a house where it was taboo to ask for what you needed. You were just supposed to hint about it, and then the other person was supposed to figure it out. And somehow it meant it was loving if they were able to mind read you and figure out what you need. Very dysfunctional. Required a lot of manipulation. And I'll tell you, in the long run, nobody got their needs met. And a lot of people felt resentful about that. Mostly me. And then I discovered I could tell the truth. Now, that can take a lot of courage and resources and vulnerability to do that. But it is the essence of mature adult relationship. Which brings us to the final of the 4 A's of healthy relationship, which is being in your adult ego state. It's very easy in intimate relationship to want to have my unresolved emotional issues healed within the relationship by this other person. My abandonment issues with my father, the lack of emotional support of my mother. Although intimate relationship can certainly provide tremendous support, nurturing, and compassion, my unresolved emotional issues existed long before I met this person, and they may exist after it. It's my responsibility to heal and manage those things. And the rule I use for staying in my adult ego state is to treat my partner the way I treat my girlfriends. If I have a problem, I don't expect my girlfriends to fix it for me. I might share it with them. I don't yell or name call my friends. I respect them. We share with each other, but there's a space between us. I don't feel it's my responsibility to fix their life. And when I do, I'm crossing over those healthy boundaries. Again, this doesn't mean we don't help and assist each other, but adult ego state is knowing where I stop and where you begin. That we have separate feelings. I'm not responsible for your feelings. You are. You aren't responsible for my feelings. I am. Again, I can accept things as they are. I can ask for them to change, or I can remove myself. That's my responsibility. So accept, appreciate, ask for what you need, and stay in your adult ego state. That's my formula for a healthy relationship. Now, the opposite of those, and I have a lot of experience with these as well, are to blame, to expect another person to change, to withhold my deeper truth, and to project my unresolved stuff onto the other person, either hoping they're going to save me or believing they're the source of my suffering. When I blame another person, I'm not taking responsibility. Now, this doesn't mean that people's behavior don't have profound impact on me. But again, I always have a choice to accept it, to ask for it to change, or to leave. If I need the other person to change in order to be able to stay in the relationship, I can ask for that. But if they're not able to do it, then I need to accept it or I need to go. Generally, what you see is what you get with a person. I had a spiritual teacher once who said to me, it's not about finding a person who has no problems. It's about finding a person with the box of problems that you can deal with and knowing what your own box of problems is too, because we all have one. So getting involved with someone because you see their potential is a really bad idea. Unless that potential is realized right now, it's unlikely it will be realized because of you. This is a hard-earned lesson in my own life. This is not to say that people don't change. I have changed radically in my life and have dedicated my life to helping others change as well. But if it's a requirement for my happiness for another person to change, I need to look deeply at what's going on. Withholding my own truth, my needs, my wants, how I really feel has been my MO much of my life. And the thing that I have come to experience over and over again is that the truth always comes out. And it can either come out straight or it comes out sideways. And it can take tremendous courage to tell the truth because it moves us out of a position of control. When we withhold our feelings, our thoughts, our needs, and our experiences from our partner, they don't have all the information. It allows me to manipulate, to try to control. I'm actually playing God. And it's not loving because I'm not giving the other person all of the information that they need to make their own choices. Withholding is rooted in fear, and honesty is rooted in love. And again, honesty, as I'm talking about it here, calls us to trust God rather than the relationship. I have a podcast on emotional honesty, if you want to explore more of my perspective on that topic. And again, the final thing I suggest that we become aware of and try not to do is to project our past, to project our unresolved emotional problems or our fantasies for being saved onto another person. And projection is generally all the things we aren't taking responsibility for within ourselves, hoping the other person will take responsibility for the things I don't want to take responsibility for. So if you want a healthy relationship, bring your adult self, accept what is, appreciate the other person, and ask for what you need. If you like this podcast, consider subscribing and leaving a review. If you're interested in finding out how spiritual psychology might be helpful in your life or learning more about my 3-month mentorship program, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. And you can find my book, workbook, and guided audio series, Allies and Demons, Working with Spirit for Power and Healing, on Amazon. And thanks as always to my generous supporters on Patreon. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.